excited to introduce Elizabeth Atcheson, and she's going to tell you about her background. Other than I want to say she went to undergrad and graduate school at Stanford and got a business degree and has worked in a number of different fields, which makes a great career counselor. She's been in this field for over 15 years. So Elizabeth, I'm going to hand her the clicker.
Thank you.
So it's so nice to meet all you guys, and usually at the beginning of something like this I'd go around and get all your names, but I'm going to be calling on you and asking your names, so just be prepared for that. I do, as Patty mentioned, have a really varied professional background. I worked in advertising, I worked in the natural foods business, I worked in higher education at Harvard Business School for a year. I worked for a nonprofit land conservation organization. I co-founded a nonprofit organization. Then I got tired and I went to business school. Went to business school for 2 years, came out, started working for a kind of startup market research firm in San Francisco, and then while I was there, became a career coach, and that was about 15 years ago. And since 2008, as you guys probably know, everything has changed in the job market. And so what's happening is that job seekers have to be sharper than ever before on all dimensions. You three that are over there, would you mind locating into the center zone here? Sorry, it's just easier if I can see everybody, and then when we're handing out handouts, it'll be easier. Thank you. There are many seats down here. So let me give you a little bit of a glimpse of what we're going to talk about today. Can you guys in the back read that? Most of the slides are not this small. Okay, good. So we're going to talk about why networking is scary, what is a personal narrative, what is networking, what is informational interviewing, and then hopefully we'll have time for some questions at the end. And before we get started, I just kind of wanted to take a moment and say, okay, where are you right now? Everyone here is a senior, right? You're all, no, we got some early birds. What years are both of you? Junior. A couple of juniors, and then everybody else is a senior? Oh my goodness. You guys are getting on the ramp early. That's so good. So it's very important before you start putting yourself out there to complete some self-assessment and reflection. In other words, to know who you are, because that's going to help you position yourself to get something. Maybe you've got a little bit of experience in a field you're interested in. Maybe your coursework, i.e. your major, has prepared you to work in that field. And most importantly, everyone is asking you right now, what are you going to do after you graduate? Don't you hear that question like all the time? I mean, seriously, even people you don't even know feel that they can ask you that question. It's amazing. So what that means is that it's time to start talking about yourself. And for some people who are extroverted, you know, the kinds of people that take acting classes and love to get up on the stage, it's no problem. But for most of us, it's kind of hard to walk up to someone we don't know and talk about ourselves. Would you agree? I mean, it's really kind of hard. Why is it hard? Why is it hard? Like, let's say your wonderful career services department puts on a networking event. Do you do events where employers come, all kinds of mixers, maybe SPU alumni, and there you are. You've got your name tag on, you took a shower, you maybe came with a friend, because I highly recommend that when you go to one of these places, go with a friend, because it just makes it easier to walk in the room. Why is it scary? Tell me, why is it scary? What's your name? First tell me your name. Maisha. So why is it scary?
I guess I've gone to a couple of mixers, but I just don't know what to say.
Yeah.
I just get stuck on that just initial how to start a conversation.
Exactly. Which is it's so funny, because you think to yourself, okay, if I could figure out what to say, problem solved, right? But it's a little more than that, right? What else makes it scary? Is that similar to what you were going to say?
Yeah.
What's your name first?
My name is Atcheson.
Aislinn. Okay. Why is it scary?
I know that when people ask me like why I'm interested in a field, because I'm doing psychology and
Yes.
health sciences, sometimes the answer seems kind of private, almost like
Yes.
I
Yes.
don't want them-
Yes.
There's too much information for some.
Did you guys hear what Aislinn said? She said, yeah, and that I think is absolutely true too. When someone is talking to you about something that you care a lot about, you've been studying it, you chose it as your major, and they're a complete stranger, it almost feels, I don't know, it feels a little bit, not like an imposition, but it just, you're sort of fumbling for your words and you want to make it sound good, but at the same time, you don't know this person at all. So it is, it's intimidating. What else makes networking scary? Walking into a room, maybe it's even just a party. Yes, and what's your name?
Rachel.
Rachel.
The feeling that you're not going to be good enough in any position that they're looking for.
Yes, exactly. I think there is a huge, just as you come into this job search and you're reading the headlines about how difficult it is to get jobs, you're like, oh, who am I? What am I? So I want to give you guys a tip before we get into this presentation. Have you ever heard this statement? There are two kinds of people in the world. People who walk into the room and say, here I am. And people who walk into the room and say, there you are. There you are. I want you guys to be the second kind of person, okay? And this will ease your nerves and make you more attractive and appealing to the other person if you focus on them. So when you walk in that room and you're standing there, you're shaking hands, and maybe you say thank you for taking the time to come to this SPU event. Maybe it's an SPU alum. And the very next thing you say is, what brings you here? Or where are you from? Or what was your path? Shine the light on them first. Get them talking. Because that will help with, Aislinn, what was your name again? Aislinn, with Aislinn's point. That will help because at least you'll start to know them a little bit better. So that's just a little kind of a starting point for you. But fundamentally, it's easier to talk about yourself when you have something to say. And this is Katie, she's a sophomore and she works in the career office, and she's going to help passing out handouts. So before we go to that handout, I'm going to just quickly walk you through this little salmon colored handout that I gave you first. Is kind of a bonus handout. It doesn't really specifically relate to the content that we're covering today, but I just wanted to give you kind of a to-do list for how to get your job. First, you figure out the field that you're most interested in. Then you identify, maybe with the help of career services or with the help of informational meetings, some possible settings in your field. And I've given you examples here that should match up. So if accounting is a field of interest to you, an auditing firm might be a place for you to investigate. Step 3 is to develop your personal narrative, which we are just about to do, and a resume and a LinkedIn profile, all of which tie together to present you in a thematically consistent way, so that when someone looks at your representation, both orally and on paper, it's all consistent thematically. Who you are jumps out. Then you start talking to people, ask who they know in your target field, and then you start conducting informational meetings, because that will build your professional network. And one thing you can do right now is instead of talking about building a network, Start talking about building a professional network. It just has a better sound, in my humble opinion. I just think it sounds better. Okay, so let's figure out what you're going to say. Okay, a personal narrative, some people call it an elevator speech. What do they call it in the Career Services office here? Is it an elevator speech or a
30-second pitch or an elevator speech.
30-second pitch? Okay, that's perfect. So it's basically for that exact moment when you are, maybe you see your dad's best friend from college who you haven't seen in a long time. And he says, so, Maisha, what are you going to do after you graduate from SPU? You're going to say, okay, well, in high school I did this, and I've been studying this. I'm graduating with a major in this. What I'm exploring, and then your ask. The next, so these are the 4 elements of your narrative. Where you are now. Now, the great thing when you're a senior is it's really easy. I'm graduating in, is it June or May? In June. I'm graduating in June with a major in accounting. You've got that sewn up. So I've given you a little worksheet there. If you want to go ahead and fill in your seniors especially, go ahead and fill that right in on your yellow sheet, because the first one in this particular case is very clear. What you focused on in college and any summer jobs that you may have had. And this is where your field of interest, just your interests. You know, maybe you worked at the campus radio station or newspaper. Maybe you volunteered somewhere that is kind of in your area of interest. Maybe you worked in one of the campus departments that also ties with the field you're interested in. Anybody got a question about number 2 here, like what you worked on? Is anybody having any difficulty with that one, the second part of the narrative? Yes, what's your name?
Jackie.
Jack.
What if what you did over summer didn't relate to what you're studying?
A great question. If it was something substantive that you explored because you thought you might be interested in it, and then you had a substantive reason for switching away from it, it's worth explaining. But if it was something like, you know, being a camp counselor or something like that, unless you're planning to go into recreation management. What was it? Okay, yeah. Yeah. So probably I would steer away from that and try to focus on anything you've done during the year or even in past summers that relate. What's your major, Jackie? Nutrition. Oh, well, being a waitress, totally related. Oh yeah, I actually, no, I mean that. I mean, I think, especially if you've done any other related, maybe volunteer jobs, or maybe you've worked in the cafeterias here or something like that, and you waitress because A, you needed, you know, to be making money, and B, it was a great way to see up close and personal the front lines of feeding people. Okay, is everybody good with number 2? Okay, what you're exploring now, okay, and that is, and you can see, I think I gave you some examples in there. So now I'm exploring how someone with my background might start a career or make a contribution or begin to be helpful at. Did I say the word job? Did I say the word job just now? I didn't hear the word job. And I don't want you to use the word job. I want you to talk about yourself in a very professional way. You have just earned a 4-year college degree. You are a bundle of freshly minted skills. And there will be an employer who will recognize that. So act as if you are choosing them as much as they are choosing you. This is one time in your life when you have a lot of things going for you. One of the things you have going for you is that you're young. People love helping young people. Have you noticed this? Like all those people who say, what are you going to do after you graduate? Why are they asking you that question? Is it so they can sneer at you? Why are they asking you that? What's your name? Megan, why are they asking you that? Oh, Megan, why are they asking you that question?
I think it might be because they might be interested if you're going to stick around there, see if you can come in, or just like they probably are looking for if you have a set idea in mind or if they could make you interested.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of times people who ask you that question have a business and they hire young people and they're wondering if maybe you would be one of those people. Or they don't have a business, but they know so many people. They know people. And I'll give you a little hint. Nobody who asks you that question does not want to help you. When they ask you, what are you doing after you graduate? They're asking you because they want to help you. So ask them if they know anyone in the nutrition field. So that's your fourth piece, is the ask. And one thing I do want to mention is that while you're looking for a job, and this will be true your whole life, because as sort of waves rolling onto the beach, throughout your life, you'll go through phases where you will again be looking for a job or a career. And every single time you will be making asks of people. So this is a good time to do it because you're young, people want to help you, you're a freshly minted bundle of skills. If you get used to asking now, it'll be a lot easier when you're my age and people are like, oh, God, her again. Right? I mean, take advantage of this. It's all good, is what I'm trying to say. So do you guys have a sense now of how you would complete your personal narrative? I would love to have one of you. What's your name, sir? Nate?
Nathan.
Nathan. Would you mind reading yours to us? Are you a senior? Oh, sorry. I need a senior. Would a senior mind reading his or hers? In the turquoise shirt. Are you a senior? Do you mind reading it?
No.
What's your name?
Maggie.
Maggie. Let's hear Maggie's narrative.
Okay. I'm graduating in June 2013 with a nutrition dietetics degree from SPU. This past summer, I did an internship with a dietitian at Whitby General Hospital, and I didn't write part 3, but
right now I'm exploring ways of entering the nutrition and dietetics field.
okay.
We could keep it simple.
I'm exploring my internship that I need for my RD certification. And do you happen to know anyone in dietetics or nutrition that I could talk to?
Fantastic. See? It's easy, isn't it? Nice. Good job, Maggie. Okay, now you'll notice at the bottom of the page, I've given you another little section for you to fill out. And this to some degree falls in the category of TMI, but I believe it is helpful because when you get out in the job market, you will be competing with, on average, 3 other people who have the same set of qualifications you do. So the name of the game is to differentiate yourself from everyone else. So that raises the question of how you position yourself. And positioning, anybody study marketing in here? Or anybody know positioning of products, positioning of services? When you position a product, you are explaining that product in a way that makes it different from and better than products that compete with it. Well, you are a product right now being introduced to the job market. And so you need to understand the attributes you possess that differentiate you from your competition. And the quickest way to get to that is what you think of as your strengths. It might be, like if you go through your life, it could be a personal quality, like patience. You know how people sometimes say to you, gosh, Maggie, you're such a patient person, or you're such a kind person, or they might say, Jackie, you're so creative, or you have such a great sense of humor. I mean, there are different things that people say to you. Listen to those things and see if they help differentiate you from other people in terms of the job that you're applying for. It turns out that an area in our economy that's growing very strongly right now is geriatric care management, and patience is hugely important for working in geriatric care management for all the reasons you can well imagine. Maybe you're fluent in a particular language. Anybody here fluent in a language other than English? What do we got going here? Let's hear some languages. Korean, Spanish,
French.
Excellent, excellent. Were you fluent in a language? No? Okay, so definitely put those down. Being fluent in a language almost always is helpful. You don't exactly know how it's going to be helpful, but it will be. Maybe you've done a couple of internships in your field. That's probably the best differentiator of all, because people want you to have some kind of experience. Maybe, and this is a big one for college seniors, you are flexible, right? Any of you have children yet? Okay. So you may be the only exception here. Just go la, 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 while I'm talking for the next couple of minutes. So this is a beautiful thing, and you should merchandise it. Tell people that you're flexible. If they need you to move to Portland, or Spokane, or New York City, or Dubai, that you would be willing to go. You're not going to find many times in your life when you are flexible. So grab this moment. Right? Sir, what is your name?
Darren.
Gary? Darren. So Darren knows, I know, Patty knows. Rick, maybe you know. I don't know. It's nice to be flexible. Okay, specialized training or education. Yes, SPU. Enjoyment of something most people despise. I collect these. You know how some people collect Beanie Babies? I collect examples of people who do careers in an area that nobody else likes, like garbage collection or sewage cleanout or extermination. Anybody got one of those for me? No? Seriously, if you have anything like that, notice that. If people say, God, how can you stand doing that? Make a note to yourself and say, maybe I could build a career on that. Detail orientation and ability to focus. We live in an ADD culture in which people are whipping out their phones every 2 minutes or every 1 minute. So if you are detail oriented and if you are able to focus, that is absolutely something that differentiates you. And you should put that on your little list there at the bottom. So keep thinking as you go through the job search process and you have your informational meetings, you will find out which of your differentiating attributes are valuable to prospective employers. And those are the ones you should start talking about. Any questions about positioning? Okay. And you can put, I have found that it works really well to weave your positioning right into your LinkedIn profile. So this is an imaginary student, and I have, I've just highlighted 2 of his positioning attributes, of his differentiating attributes. He's got internship experience and excellent Spanish conversational skills. So it's when you go to create your LinkedIn profile, that's something to be thinking about. Both your narrative and your positioning will be helpful for creating your LinkedIn profile. Okay, so we've talked about this. The one thing I want to mention is to always be honest. And this is just something that's worth being reminded at this stage of your career. Integrity is something that lasts until you do something naughty. And then it's very hard to get your integrity back. And it's the kind of thing that follows you forever. It's one of the things that happens when you're a career coach is that people come to work with you because they're having great difficulty finding a job. And often when I dig under the surface of a new client, I find out that they made such a mistake in their past and it's haunted them. So always be honest, don't exaggerate. You can phrase and frame, but don't exaggerate. Those are different kinds of things. Well, this is a reassuring note, Mr. Bonwell. No dolphins were killed in the preparation of this resume. So this is kind of a dumb little cartoon, but Mr. Bonwell happens to be an environmentalist, okay? So I actually think it's kind of cool he put that at the bottom of his resume. So whatever you are, when you're thinking about your resume, your marketing materials, what you're bringing to a job interview, it should thematically reflect your field. The nutrition and dietetics students up there, you guys are in. You can bring brownies, brownies made with wheat germ and low fat, I don't know what. But seriously, you see what I'm saying here. Make your resume, your marketing materials, and your everything that represents you should tie thematically to your field. Is anyone having trouble thinking about doing that with their field? We have one late ad, so maybe she should have a handout. She just arrived. Hi. Everybody can think of a creative way to. Okay, well, you'll keep this in mind. Okay, so now we're going to go and start talking to people. So why do you need to go do networking and have informational meetings? This guy is standing in front of this gloomy florist who clearly did not make the right career choice, by the way. Don't you agree? And he's saying, are these beautiful? I can't ever tell. And this is, all of you are in the situation where you are bringing your resume, all of you, everything that you represent, to the job market. And you don't know what's beautiful and what isn't. You might find out that one piece of that waitressing experience you had, where you had weekly meetings with the local farms to talk about how to put their products on the table. I don't know, maybe you were waitressing at Denny's or something. No. Yeah, but what? Spaghetti Factory. Well, so actually that's really interesting because Spaghetti Factory is a big sort of corporate food service enterprise. And maybe there's an angle there like how they strive to make it seem personal when you go in there. And how you use your time working there to study how they make it personal there. I don't know, something like that. So this is why you need to talk to people, is to find out what's valuable about you and what you can position to sell to employers. Networking, I want to be really clear, the definition of networking, all it is connecting with people. So it's friends, it's family, it's your neighbors, it's everyone your parents know. That's a hugely overlooked group. Your parents have lived a long time and they know a lot of people. So be sure to ask them if they know anyone in your field. Acquaintances from the gym, the corner store. The big one is trade associations in your target field. Have any of you already been in touch with the trade associations in your field? Do you know what I mean by that phrase, trade associations? So trade associations are national, sometimes international, but usually national groups that represent people in a particular field. So like there's a National Association of Colleges and Employers that represents people like Patty and me. There is, I'm sure, a National Association of Nutritionists. Oh, yeah, the Academy of Nutrition. Literally all you do is type into, I've never seen this fail, you type into Google, National Association of Parachutists. I swear, instantly it comes up. There is a national trade association for everything. Daryl or Darren? Darren, what field are you in?
Mine's a little different. I'm a business major, but I'm also taking a lot of math classes.
Ah, okay.
And I'm going to take the master's in teaching.
Ah,
I have a business degree, so maybe we teach a little bit of both.
You teach business and math.
Yeah.
Okay. So certainly teachers, of course, have many bodies that represent them. Anybody here have a field that they're wondering if there's a national association for it? Or are you all pretty? Believe me, there are people who work at those national associations who love to work with people graduating from college to help them find their way in the career. In fact, most of them have entire web pages that say things like, so you're thinking about being an occupational therapist, or so you want to be an auditing specialist. So those websites have tremendous resources. And the staff there are also willing to help. If you make a phone call, they'll just die with happiness because everyone emails them all the time. They sit at their computers all day. And now some bright, cheerful college student calls them, they'll be so happy. I'm not making this up. Alumni and career offices of SPU. Now, obviously, you're already making the most of the career office because you're here. And I'm assuming there's a lot of sort of correspondence and collaboration between the career office too, because you are going to want to connect to SPU alumni in your field. That is a hugely valuable group for you. So the goals of networking are, first of all, just to let people know you're exploring. Did I say you're looking for a job? No, I did not say that. I said you're exploring careers. Lets you practice your narrative, refine your marketing materials. What would cause you to refine your what do I mean by marketing materials? What's your name in the blue right there? Yes. What's your name? Harris? Karis. Karis, what do I mean by your marketing materials? What do you think your marketing materials are? Your LinkedIn. Yeah, all your stuff. So what would cause you to refine and change them as you go through the process, do you think? Like if you're having conversations with people, why would you go back and change something in your resume? Do you want to answer that, Karis? What's your name? Sorry.
Brianna.
Brianna. Why would you change it?
Well, as you're talking to people, you might find out like a certain skill or something that a certain company is looking for.
Yes.
And so you might change your LinkedIn to reflect that. Like,
Yeah.
I have these things that you're looking for.
Exactly. So what's your field or major?
Communication.
Communication. So let's say that Brianna starts talking to people who work in communications jobs, and they say, oh, well, we always look for the new ads, the new hires, especially young and right out of college. We count on them to be our social media experts. So, and maybe you've just kind of dabbled in social media, but it hasn't really been your thing. That is your sign from the universe to beef up the social media part of your resume and to maybe take a little extra, squeeze in a little extra course on it, or start spending more time tweeting or doing Instagram or whatever it is you want to do. So that's exactly right, Brianna. That's what would cause you to refine it. It also helps you get support and guidance because this is not an easy thing going through this. So as you're networking, you can kind of, let people be supportive to you. It feels good. But most importantly, you network so you can find people you can do an informational meeting with. Okay, now, the goals of informational meetings are a little different. They are, because remember, an informational meeting, which those two terms are used interchangeably. Informational meeting, informational interview. We can probably pass this one out now. Thank you. So keep in mind that when you're doing an informational meeting, you will be doing it with someone in your field, okay? The reason it's called an informational interview is that you are asking the questions, right? But when you're asking someone for one, sometimes it seems a little easier to ask for an informational meeting. I always find the word interview a little stiff somehow. But if you feel comfortable asking someone for an informational interview, that's fine too. They're very well established. People know what you're doing. You don't have to mention that you're looking for a job because they know it. They know that you're exploring careers. They know you're exploring a field. Okay? So these are people who work in your field and they can give you guidance. They can say, oh, if you want to have a career in communications, you should be working, you could work in the communications office of really any company, any nonprofit, or any government agency. All you want to be doing is working in communications. Who knows if they'll say that, but that would help you expand your job search. They also can point you towards someone who might be hiring, and of course that's kind of the golden outcome of an informational meeting. When I first became a career coach, 85% of jobs were found through the process of informational interviewing. That figure has now, and it's an impossible figure to verify, but it's now almost 95%. And what that means is that you have to do it. So this little girl is saying, I'd love to chat longer, Pops, but I'm working the room. What is she doing? Is she networking or is she information? Did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question about that last slide.
Yes.
95% of jobs are found like your personal, what you're interested in, or the actual job, like.
Okay, so what this means is that if you talk to 95% of the people who landed a job, any job in the last year, they found it because they knew someone, they went to talk to somebody, they maybe volunteered somewhere. Not that that got them the job, mind you, it got them in the interview pool.
So it's not that they're finding out what they're interested in, it's the actual job that they got.
Yes, yep. And in my own client base, I can, it's almost more like 99%. It's really a staggering number how effective it is these days. I mean, let me just put it this way. If you're sitting on your computer for 8 hours a day applying for jobs online, you won't find a job. And what I suggest to people is that, let's say you're spending an hour talking to people and trying to schedule informational meetings and 7 hours applying for jobs online. Flip that ratio. Spend an hour looking for jobs online and 7 hours scheduling informational meetings. And there's a piece of good news in this that I will tell you at the very end of this workshop, if I remember. So if I forget, somebody ask me, because it's a piece of really good news. Okay, so what's this little girl doing? Is she networking or is she informational interviewing?
They kind of blend together, right?
Well, in this particular thing, she's really just networking because she doesn't know what field these people are in. But every one of these people, she's going to say, do you know someone who works in communications? And this woman is saying, what's it like working with your hands? It's kind of a joke, but she's informational interviewing. Because really, that is what you do when you go to talk to somebody. You ask them, what's it like to work in the communications office of a government agency? What's it like to be a nutritionist in an assisted living center? You know, maybe that's something you want to do. Maybe after having the informational interview with someone who works as a nutritionist in an assisted living center, you go out, you get on the bus, you go back to your dorm, and you think, oh my God, I am never going to work in an assisted living center. And that's very valuable information for you. That happened to me when I graduated from college. I had a psychology major in college, and I started interviewing for jobs afterwards, and I went to the first interview at a mental health clinic, and I left the job, and I left the interview, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't think I want to work in mental health clinics. So I had to kind of start all over. Okay, so what you're going to need is to create some sort of tracking system for the team that is going to help you get to the next level. So all these people you're going to meet, you need to capture their information. And I think an Excel spreadsheet is really good. I've heard of other people using, someone I know used something called Toodly-Doo, which syncs to all your mobile devices, which sounds really intimidating to me, but maybe one of you will really enjoy that. I think an Excel spreadsheet is perfect, and it should capture first name, last name, email, how you know them. It's surprisingly important to keep track of this stuff because you need to remember when you thanked them, and we're going to get to thanking in a minute. But create your spreadsheet right now. Okay. So this guy is kind of misusing his information. Fine, Alan, how are you? Your charming wife, your 2 wonderful children, blah. He's kind of going on and on in a droning sort of way. But you do want to capture information about your people. I just realized, are we finishing at 5:30? Oh, we're finishing at 6. Oh, good. Okay. Started getting nervous all of a sudden. Okay. So let's talk about informational interviewing. And I've given you a little handout that has, on the front of it, it has just some basic tips, some of the things I've already mentioned to you. And I'm going to walk you through the steps of informational interviewing, and most of them are captured in this handout. So first of all, through networking, you find someone who knows someone in your target field. So let's use Brianna. Let's say that Brianna's, one of her professors knows someone who works in communications at the Seattle mayor's office. Okay, she's like a communications manager or something in the mayor's office. And you say, oh, would you be comfortable introducing me to her so that I could talk to her and ask her questions about her job? And of course, she'll say yes, because remember what I told you earlier? Everybody wants to help young, beautiful people. Really, take my word for it. You offer to do the work yourself of contacting that person. Okay, so Brianna's going to say something like, would you be comfortable giving me your email address, giving me her email address, and I'll be sure to use your name in my email? Why would Brianna want to do that? Why would she at least offer to do the work herself of contacting this person? Absolutely. It shows initiative. That's one reason. It shows that you're putting yourself out there. Yes. Why would you?
You know if the contact has been made and not bothering somebody else about it.
Yes. That's such a great point, because if she doesn't do, if she says she'll do it but she doesn't, then you become the pest that's like, did you contact Margaret in the mayor's office? So yeah, now about that one, it goes about 50-50. About 50% of the time, if the person is like me, is a little bit of a control freak, a little OCD, that person will say, oh no, I will contact Margaret, because I want to know that I'm introducing you, that I'm respecting Margaret's time. But the other half the time, the person's like, oh, thank God, one less thing off my plate. Here's her email address. Make sure you use my name. Okay, so that's how that works. Any questions on that? Okay. And then you promise to use their name in the email. So I've given you here a couple of sample emails, and you'll see in the subject. So look at that first email. It says subject of email, Andy Thompson referral, request for short informational meeting. So Andy Thompson is the person who referred you, and you're requesting the meeting. Why do you put the name of the person that person knows in the subject?
And it's important because your name is just a total stranger.
Because exactly, your name is you're a total stranger. And most people, when they look at the blizzard of emails they have, if there's one they can delete without even opening it, yippee, delete, instant delete. But if the name of the person they know is in there, they are not going to delete it. Okay, emphasize your common connection. A big one, of course, is SPU alum. SPU alums are going to want to help you. So put SPU alum either right in the first sentence or even in the subject. Offer to bring a latte. This is a bribe. Bribes are good. Remember I said to be ethical and honest? This is not unethical and it's not dishonest. You're just saying, I'd be happy to bring you a latte. Just let me know what kind you like and I'll bring it with me. This is an unbelievably effective tool. It opens doors.
Question.
Yes.
If you're networking someone trying to get a job in another continent, people very, very far away.
Yes.
How does this change?
So give me the specifics.
So I'm looking for a position that has a missional focus in Latin America.
That has a what focus?
Missional.
Missional. Okay, in Latin America.
And so I'm trying to know people in Guatemala, and
Okay.
Colombia,
Yes.
and so forth. And so
Yeah.
I would love to be able to go down and meet with them and buy them a coffee, but
Yeah, you can't. I don't know in that specific instance how that works. Probably you are more familiar with when a mission is involved.
I would use my contacts. I mean, we have the study abroad. That could be a possibility because they're connected with a lot of, at least people in those countries. And then use your contacts here to connect you with people. And I guess the next best thing would be to do it over the phone. I'd also
Yeah.
use LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn is going to be huge for all of you, no matter what your field is. I've worked with people the most recent one I worked with was a guy who was fluent in Portuguese and wanted to work in supply chain logistics in Brazil. And he was based in Colorado. And so he did exactly that. And it was exactly as Patty said. He ended up doing a lot of phone work, email, phone. And then eventually landed a job he did have to go somewhere else in the country. He had to fly to Washington for an interview, but then he got a job. So that was good. Yeah, I think it kind of depends on the circumstances a little bit. Yes?
I'm not interested in doing anything like international, but what do you think about utilizing like Skype or something of the sort, like face to face?
You mean if they're in a different town? Yes. If you can use Skype, that's definitely better because then they can see you. So yeah, great tip. What's your name?
I'm
Karina. Yeah. So that was a great tip. Use Skype if you can because then they get more of a blast of you. It's a really good idea. Okay. If you don't hear anything, they were buried under their emails. So just wait 2 weeks and write again. And when you do that, they'll be like, they'll know you already wrote. And they'll be like, oh, I guess I can't ignore this because this is a pretty persistent person. And they won't be angry, but they'll just be like, okay, now I do have to deal with this. Okay? But don't write an accusatory email, right? I mean, don't say, I wrote you 2 weeks ago, right? You're just going to send a very similar email. Not exactly the same, but very similar, okay? If you still don't hear anything, make a phone call, because there are about 10% of people who ignore most of their emails, but they actually answer their phone. So make a phone call, leave a very complete and articulate message. If you still don't hear anything, let it go. By the way, since you guys are all in job search mode, I'm assuming you have a fabulous greeting on your phone, right? It says, hello. You stand up and you fill your chest with air and you're vital and dynamic. Do it right after you've had a cup of coffee. Hi, you've reached Brianna, whatever your name is, Brianna Smith. Please leave me a complete message, or please leave me a detailed message. Do not have it say just your phone number, and do not have it just be your first name. You're entering the professional world. Similarly, when you answer your phone, if you don't recognize the number, answer in a professional way, which could just be, hello, this is Brianna, or something like that. Okay. Let's see. Do we? Hang on. Step 2. Okay. Step 3 is preparation. Okay, so now you've got your interview set up. Oh, you know, before we do that, I want to just call to your attention a couple of things in these emails. So the first one, this June I am graduating, blah, 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 and I'm exploring career paths, blah, blah, blah. Andy Thompson suggested that you would have some really interesting insights about this area. Really interesting insights is flattery. And flattery, just like bribes, is good. Okay? He's going to think, oh, yes, I would have some interesting insights, wouldn't I? Yes, I could help this nice young person. Okay. Would it be possible to meet with you at your office? Why at the office? Why do you specify office and offer to bring a latte? So that they don't just shoot right back to you and say, I'll meet you at the Starbucks across the street. No, 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 no. You want them to be on their bottoms in their office, in front of their computer screen. Why, Brianna?
Well, I was just going to say, maybe it's less of an inconvenience for them. They'll be more receptive if
That's
you're
the
not
number one reason.
interrupting their day.
Exactly. 20 minutes. Who can't take 20 minutes? If they can't, they have a much bigger problem. Really, seriously. What's another reason you want them in their office? Why do you want to have them where they, or in the case of dietitians, it might not be in an office, it might be in a clinic or something like that. Why? Darren?
They're by a phone or a computer, so they can...
Exactly. So when they give you referrals, they'll just have the information right there. And yes, what's your name?
My name is Krista.
Krista.
I just have a question.
Oh, yes.
Would it be maybe more polite and appropriate to offer an alternative? It seems like most people are really busy when they're at work during the day. No?
An alternative like?
I don't know, like the Starbucks across the street. It's like, how do we know that everyone is going to have 20 minutes to spare while they're at work?
Well, they're either going to have 20 minutes or they're not. And if they do, you want them in their office because it is more convenient for them to be there. They don't have to go anywhere. But most importantly, you become, for the day, an anthropologist. And you are studying every artifact. They are surrounded by the artifacts of their profession. Are you an anthropologist?
No.
Okay. They are surrounded by the artifacts of their profession. From the moment you walk in the building till the time you're ushered into their office and you sit down, everything that goes through your eyeballs should register with you, because it gives you clues about what that field is like, and it lets you ask little questions. Like, let's say you walk into their office and it says, City of Seattle, day of planting or something like that. And so this is back to if you were interviewing with Margaret in the mayor's office, in the mayor's communications office. And you can say, oh, what's the day of planting? And then she says, oh, it's this thing we do every year, blah, 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 blah. And then you say, oh, do you need volunteers for it? A great opportunity that would never have happened if you hadn't been in their office. So, and especially if you're going into a field like you dietitian nutritionists up there, where it's kind of a clinic setting, this is really going to be important. Anybody have a question about that with regard to their particular field? Yes?
Yeah, mine's like individual and family development.
Ah, okay, individual and family development. Okay, so that could be, have you thought about places where you could bring that major?
It's really broad. There's a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, okay, yeah. So this is a great example of how informational interviews can help you. If your major prepares you for a variety of work settings, which probably quite a few of yours do, it's really helpful to conduct informational meetings to help you narrow down the list. Because by the time you finish talking to people in one or two of these fields, you're going to be like, oh, I would not want to do that. Or, wow, that sounds really cool. And believe me, you will know. It will maybe just take one. If it's a no, it often will happen with just one meeting. If it's a strong yes, it usually takes 2 or 3 informational meetings, but that really should help you narrow it down. Does that answer the question? Okay, for 20 minutes. Why 20 minutes? Why do you ask for 20 minutes? Sorry, what is your name again?
Rachel.
Rachel, yeah.
It's short, but it gives them enough time to see you as a legitimate
Yes.
presence and face that they don't.
Exactly. It's short enough that it's hard for them to say no, but it's long enough that they really get to know you. Like if Rachel, let's say Rachel wanted to go into career coaching, and so she got my name from Patty and she did an on-the-phone informational interview. I would be very happy to do that, and I would hang up the phone and I would never think about Rachel again for the rest of my life. But if Rachel met me in my office and we talked about career coaching for 20 minutes, I would be I'd be falling asleep at night thinking, let's see, who else can I introduce Rachel to? So it's really important. When you sit in front of them for 20 minutes, they get on your team because they like you and they want to help you. And they like you and want to help you because you're a curious, taking the initiative type young person. I'll bring you a latte. Just let me know what type you like and I'll bring it with me. I promise to take no more than 20 minutes of your time. So do you bring a latte for yourself too? I mean, a latte or some other drink. It can go either way. I'm just saying because people have asked me that. If you want to have a latte, it's kind of nice because then you both have your lattes. If you don't, because you're going to be like, you're already holding that folder that Career Services is giving you with your resumes in it, that beautiful folder. Seriously, that thing is great. You should totally carry that around. So that's a great thing. Okay. Was there a question somewhere? No. Okay. So this is preparation. Before you contact them for the informational meeting, have your resume ready as if you could start working at that place tomorrow. Because about half the time when you don't send them the resume the first time around, because you're not looking for a job, you're exploring career paths. But about half the time they'll write back and say, sure, come on in next Wednesday at 9 o'clock. I like a tall soy with sugar-free cinnamon dolce, that's my kind. And please email me your resume beforehand because they know what you're doing. So you've got to have it ready so that you can quickly send it back to them. Same with LinkedIn. Do your homework. That should go without saying. It would be embarrassing if you walked in there and asked questions that could have easily been answered by visiting their website, right? So you're going to go look at the website, Google the person you're meeting with, because you'll find all kinds of random connections that you can build on. I recommend, especially if it's in a downtown location, to scout ahead of time the location, because I've just heard so many horror stories about people being late, and then you're all sweaty and you're ruffled and it doesn't go the way you want it to be. So I recommend arriving in the zone about a half hour early, but don't go into the office until 5 minutes before your appointment time. Because if you go in 10, 15 minutes before, then you become a problem for the receptionist. She's like, God, this creepy guy is he's still here. So, and I mean, it's just, and then you have to make small talk, and no, it just doesn't work. 5 minutes. But do get the name of the person. I mean, if it feels comfortable to you, get the name of the person who checks you in. Hi, I'm Karina Smith, and I'm here to visit so-and-so. And you see their little nameplate. Thank you, Andy. Just use their name. It's always nice to use somebody's name. Dress as if you were going to a job interview, which in most places on the West Coast, it varies by city. We all know about Portland. Seattle's a little bit upgraded from that. San Francisco, sorry, Portland is much more informal in its larger city setting than Seattle is. I didn't mean to offend anyone. I saw this look of shock and horror back there. Anybody looking for jobs in San Francisco, LA, any of those places? Okay, be very aware of the dress norms in those places. You can find out from the person who's introducing you what you think you should wear. And you're going to thank the person as you enter. Okay, the beautiful thing is you set the agenda, you ask the questions. So I've given you the agenda items on the back. So here are your 4 agenda items. The first one is, what was your path to what you're doing now? And that's asked in a very open-ended way, because you want the person to tell you what they want to tell you. You don't know that much about the field. So you don't want to say, well, so where did you go to college? You know what I mean? You want to just let them tell you how they got there. So ask a very general question. What was your path to what you're doing now? What do you like about this job? What do you like about what you do? Now, there are 2 fabulous reasons to ask that question. Anybody want to take a guess as to why you asked that question? There are 2 glowing golden reasons that you ask that question.
Their legs might be your legs?
Yes.
Or vice versa?
Yes. If they start saying what they love about their job, and you're just like, oh, that's exactly, I love those kinds of things, then you know you're in the right field, the right area. The other fabulous reason to ask that question is when somebody comes and they ask you what you like about your job, you feel good talking about it. So after you've gone home and taken the used latte cups with you, they're going to remember their meeting with you, and it's going to have this fuzzy golden glow around it. Because they talked about, like if Rachel came to me to talk about career coaching and she said, what do you like about what you do? And I talked to her for 10 minutes, probably it'd be more like an hour, about why I like what I do. When I think back on my meeting with Rachel, I'm going to be like, God, that was a great meeting, right? You feel good talking about it. And most people, shockingly, like their jobs. I'm here to tell you. It's a stereotype that people don't like their jobs, in my humble opinion. Okay, your third question is, what changes are you seeing in this field? This question lets you increase your level of expertise about the field that you're vectoring into, and it allows yourself to position yourself in your upcoming informational meetings as someone who really knows a lot about the field. So last year, I worked with a guy in the freight forwarding industry who was trying to move from Atlanta to Seattle with his 2 young children and his wife. And he'd never done informational interviewing before. He was in his late 30s, and he was British, and he didn't like the whole idea of it. The whole thing made him uncomfortable. The latte thing really put him over the edge. But he followed mine. I was like, please, you just got to trust me on this. And it worked like a charm. He did 2 weeks of informational interviews, one in September and one in November. And he got offered a job in January because of one of them. And when he asked people, what changes are you seeing in this field? The first meeting he went to, which was at a freight forwarding firm down in Tacoma, the guy said something about how Canada was starting to, really play a big role because of this, that, and the other thing. Well, then the next day he goes to his next informational interview, and he's just chit-chatting with the guy, and he says, yeah, I've heard Canada, the whole Canadian influence in this area is real. And the guy thinks, wow, this guy really knows a lot, right? I mean, it just makes you seem so knowledgeable about the field. And it helps you, if you're asking what the trends and the changes are, it helps you position yourself towards what is coming, right? And then the final question, there's always the ask. You knew that was coming, right? Can you think of anyone else who would be interesting to talk to about this field? Did I say the word contacts? No. That's another kind of ugly word. Do you have any contacts for me? No. Is there anybody else who would be interesting? Anyone who would be as insightful as you are? That might be going a little far. Anyone else who would be interesting to talk to? So those are your agenda items, and you can get through those in 20 minutes very nicely. Your personal narrative, the one thing that is it's just difficult to script ahead of time is when in this 20 minutes you talk about yourself. I wish I could give you a little formula for that, but there really isn't one. Some people, when you first come in, they're gonna want to say, well, could you tell me a bit about yourself? And then you share your personal narrative, basically, but have it be pointing towards a company or an organization like the one that they're working in. But it doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes people they know that you have a bunch of questions for them, and so they just let you roll with the questions. So if you don't get a chance till the very end to talk about yourself, that's fine too. Does that make sense to everyone? There's no really ideal time. You're going to have to feel that one out. Okay, so now you're in the meeting. Absolutely take notes. Have your resumes with you. Do the same thing you did before when you were networking. Offer to do the work of contacting others. Send a meaningful thank you. What's a meaningful thank you? What do I mean by meaningful?
Identify something that you talked about, maybe that isn't just, thank you for the meeting, and that's it.
Exactly.
Reminds them of.
Exactly. I mean, presumably in 20 minutes, they have shared something with you that opened your mind or made you excited or piqued your curiosity. Maybe they mentioned an article or gave you a link or suggested that you research something. And then you go home, you research it, and you're like, wow, that is so cool, I didn't even know this existed. So make sure you send a note that communicates how excited you were by the content of your meeting. I guess I need a copy of that too. Can I borrow that? And then, thank you. I just realized I should have kept one. I think email thank yous are absolutely fine because they are timely. If you send a handwritten note, it may not get there till 2 or 3 days after you've met with them. So if you are the kind of person who really likes to send handwritten notes, I think that's great. But I actually think, and I don't know what you teach, Patty, in the Career Center about handwritten versus email. Do you have a point of view on that, or is it sort of?
Well, for sure email, because it is more timely.
Yeah.
And, I think, I'm not sure as far as the younger generation, if they appreciate handwritten notes, but I say people that are more my age or a little younger appreciate them, because not everybody sends them.
Yeah.
But for sure, a nice email.
Yeah. And I've created a little handout for you because I get so many questions about how to write a good thank you note that I finally thought, okay, I'm making a handout. So this is a handout on how to thank people. It's kind of crazy. But the reason it's important is that research on fundraising, development and fundraising shows that people don't feel thanked till they've been thanked 7 times. Do you realize how many times that is? That's a lot. You should be thanking Patty and Rick and Katie every day just to get to that 7. Holy cow. So, and then you're going to also go back, and thank the person who referred you to that person. So after Brianna talks to Margaret in the mayor's office, she for sure is going to send a really nice thank you to her SPU professor who referred her there. And that's also a great chance for you to get back in touch with people. You want to keep in touch with all these people in your professional network. And all of these professors that you guys have now, they may someday be writing you grad school recommendations. So keeping in touch with them is a good idea in any case. Okay, so thanking turns out to be one of those skills that helps in so many situations, and it particularly helps you in building your professional network. So let me just see if there's anything in this handout I want to draw through with you particularly. So I've given you a sample thank you there, and I've also given you some ideas of when you can thank people, when you have the chance to thank people. So let's say this person who works in the mayor's office. You thank her when she confirms that you're meeting with her. That's number 1. Then when you walk into her office to do the informational meeting, you thank her. When you leave after 20 minutes, and by the way, you are going to leave after 20 minutes. You are going to stand up and say, this has been so helpful. If they insist that you stay, you should stay. But I would say no more than 10 minutes. I mean, unless they're literally like grabbing your jacket and saying, no, really, I mean it, stay. You may never get out of there. I had one client who did an informational interview, was there for an hour and a half. The guy he went in to talk to, this was at a firm in downtown Seattle, walked him upstairs, introduced him to somebody else. He had a second informational interview, and the whole time he's thinking, oh, I only put half an hour on my meter. So when you go, if you have a car and if you're parking, just fill it to the max, because you just never know what's going to happen, okay? So that was sort of a good problem, but he did get a ticket. But he did get a job, too, so it was okay. Yeah, exactly, so he had something to pay it with. Okay, so at the end, thank you so much. This has been so helpful. That's 3. When you write the follow-up email, that's 4. Thank you so much for spending the time with me yesterday. Then you're going to circle back. You still have 3 more to send, and you still have, let's say, 2 or 3 or 6 months left in your job search. So you're going to be circling back to that person, and each time you'll be thanking them again. And how can you circle back with them? What will make you circle back with them? What's a great excuse to circle back with them? Remember, hint, they're referring you to people. Right?
Thanking them each time.
Right. Exactly. Every time you meet with someone they referred you to, great excuse to thank them. Thank you so much for introducing me to Rick in the Seattle Pacific career office. And then another thing you can do is if you want to get in touch with somebody again because you just want to remind them you're still out there, send them a link to an article they may have missed. It needs to be in their field, and it should be something pretty substantive. Oh. Okay, so these are the steps. Identify someone, get in touch, do your homework, do the interview, thank. And why are you going to continue to stay in touch? That's how you're going to get a job. So this guy, back to Mr. Freight Forwarding guy, you know, he did these 2 weeks of informational interviews, and then he's like back in Atlanta tapping his toe. Okay, I did those informational interviews, Elizabeth. What's going to happen now? Okay, you got to stay in touch with people, think of reasons to be in touch with them. And in January, relatively quickly, really, considering he started working with me in July, he was moving to a different town, he did informational interviews in September, November. That's about 6 months. That's not too bad in this economy. In January, one of the people he'd done an informational interview with heard about a job in another company. Shot him off an email, boom, he contacted them, he got the job. So that's kind of the dream. That's how it happens. So these are the things that informational interviews give you. You know how people sometimes like acronyms? Here's today's acronym, AIR, advice, information, and referrals. That's what informational interviews give you. And if you forget everything else I've told you today, I put this slide in red so that maybe as you're falling asleep tonight, you'll see the red behind your eyelids and you'll think, what was that slide that was all red? The R rule, it's not about your resume, it's about your relationships. It is your relationships that build your professional network that will deliver you to your first post-college job. And the reason this works, Ben Franklin was a very smart guy. And someone in here is a psychology major, right? Yeah, a few. The cognitive dissonance. It's the theory of cognitive dissonance really works. If you want to make a friend, let that person do you a favor. It's really weird how that works. Make sense to everybody? Okay, so this is the process. Identify through self-assessment and reflection the field you want to be in. Develop your marketing materials with the help of the Career Center. Start networking, refine things, continue, and you're on your way. That's it. You're ready to roll. Questions? We have 2 minutes left. I think I gave out all the handouts. Did I give all the handouts? Any questions or mysteries? Yes.
So I'm just a sophomore, but I know this is more specifically for looking for jobs, but if you're looking for more of a shadowing or mentorship relationship, it's still important that, because you won't be able to have a job with them. So that kind of sort of situation. So if you're like going to med school or going to graduate school, it's still, I'm assuming, important for them. Like, to what extent should you try to stay in touch with people?
Stay in touch with people.
Like after you've shadowed them?
Oh, very important.
Okay.
Very important. Yeah, pretty much stay in touch with everyone.
Pretty much the same.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, mentoring and shadowing is actually a really great tool in a job search. Definitely stay in touch with them. Yes.
So I guess that just reminds me, staying in touch for me can be a little unclear because maybe I'll have the informational interview and then a month or two goes by and then just send an email saying, hi, thanks again, and I enjoyed.
That's where if you can find an article that would be of interest to them, that's the thing I mentioned a couple of minutes ago. It's a little hard. You have to work a little harder to come up with something. But you should be subscribing, getting online the periodicals in your field anyway. So, and you should be reading them because those are going to give you great ideas for who to talk to. By the way, you can absolutely do stone cold informational interviews. just follow the exact same process, especially if it's an SPU alum. You don't really need a referral, right? It's just SPU alum requesting short informational meeting, right? So if you're on LinkedIn, you're using your LinkedIn tools, and I know you're being taught about how to use LinkedIn, yeah. Okay, so just you've got some great SPU alum who's on LinkedIn, and just write them. It's a cold intro, but it's sort of a lukewarm intro because you're both SPU alums. But you can do it even if they're not an SPU alum. Never hurts to ask, right? And the second time you ask, they almost always say yes. So.
I want to remind you you were going to tell us something at the very
Oh,
end.
thank you. The good news. Okay, the good news is that most college graduates do not undertake this process that I have been talking about in this deliberate, intentional way. So those that do will get the jobs. Thank you, Patty.